Welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, everyone, where we explore the latest trends and insights in the world of immigration and employment. Now, before I move ahead, I would like to read out this very important disclaimer, which is here on my screen. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, and now after this very important disclaimer, welcome back everyone. You're watching Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Bharara, your host, and today we have an exceptionally informative episode lined up just for you. Our topic for today is how to conduct an effective job search, and we are thrilled to have a very special guest with us to share his expertise. Joining us is Bruce Hurwitz, President of Hurwitz Staffing Limited. Bruce has been an executive recruiter since 2003 and a career counselor since 2009. His mission is to promote the hiring of veterans and first responders, and he has been recognized as one of the top 20 career counselors to watch out for by Career Success Australia. Bruce is not only an Amazon best-selling author known for his book, The 21st Century Job Search, but he is also a highly sought-after speaker and media personality. His posts on LinkedIn have been read over 670,000 times, and he has garnered national and international media attention, including appearances on Fox Business Network, CNN's Headline News, and a mention on ABC's Good Morning America. In addition to hosting the live interview podcast, Bruce Hurwitz presents Meet the Experts, his insights on career counseling and much more. So, without any further ado, let's dive into the world of effective job searching with none other than Bruce Hurwitz, everyone. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rajni. I appreciate the opportunity. It was very kind of you to invite me.
Of course, it's a pleasure of us. Bruce, it's your first time being here on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. How are you feeling?
Hot and humid because of the weather, but other than that, I'm fine.
So good to know. That's good to know. And to our lovely audiences, I would like to tell you, we have already started, getting questions from the viewers. As you can see, notification on the chat here itself. So, but still, guys, like our ritual, I would like to tell you that we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn and also on Facebook, and the handle is Immigration Talk Show. So don't forget to subscribe to us. And if you have any question that you would like to know about how to conduct an effective job search from Bruce, you're more than welcome to post your question in the comments below. So now, Bruce, without any further ado, let's get started with the show, and let me ask you my very first question. So, Bruce, you have had quite a journey, right? So, if you can, I already have introduced you to our lovely audiences, but still, I would like you to, again, if you can please tell our audiences a bit about yourself. How did your journey start, and how did you then start, your staffing company? So, if you can, talk about your journey a bit with us and our audiences.
I'm pleased to. My career started in academia. I was on the road to becoming a university lecturer, instructor. Eventually, I hope to be a professor. As I was working on my doctorate, I noticed that I and my colleagues all thought that our doctoral dissertations were the most important thing in the world. And a lot of us were losing our grounding. We were thinking that we were more important than we were. So I wanted to get grounded and get a job in the real world. I was lucky enough to secure part-time employment, which is what I was looking for, at a small children's mental health center. It was a nonprofit. And I really enjoyed it. I got more satisfaction out of working at the nonprofit than I did from being at the university, where the most important thing was being published. And my master's thesis was published. I had numerous articles and reviews published in peer reviewed journals, leading peer reviewed journals. But it didn't give me the satisfaction that I got out of the nonprofit. So when I finished my doctoral dissertation, I left academia and entered the nonprofit field. I enjoyed it. It was great training for how to work with people with from various backgrounds and with various needs. One day I decided I was going to leave the nonprofit where I was at. And I went into the offices of a recruiter who specialized in the nonprofit sector, thinking that they might have a client who would be interested in someone with my skill set, experiences, and accomplishments. And to my surprise, they offered me a job. I accepted. And after a while, I found that I enjoyed it, and with all due modesty, that I wasn't too bad at it. Then, when the economy got bad here, and I wasn't sure if the nonprofit was going to survive, and the owner was talking about selling, I decided it was time to go out on my own. So I went and I started my own company, as you said, Hurwitz Strategic Staffing, and it began with the mission to promote the hiring of veterans. I wanted a mission-driven company because my background in a nonprofit, it made me, in the nonprofit sector, made me most comfortable working for an organization that's goal was bigger than itself, meaning bigger than just the financial bottom line. So that's how I became an executive recruiter. Then when I started my company, I began to get a lot of press, and people would contact me with questions about how to conduct a job search, advice on how to write their resume, things of that nature. So I expanded my offerings from just staffing to also career counseling. And that is a very long answer to your very short question.
No, that's a very, beautiful answer as well. People started asking you questions about how they can prepare themselves for, for the job interview, and how can they better their resumes and their profiles for the job and for the position at a company, and you help them, and that's how you decided to become a career counselor. I mean, that's really beautiful. But then, what was your goal? Of course, whenever we decide to do something in our life, whatever that is, but we have a long goal, right? We have an end goal. So, but Bruce, if I ask you, what's your end goal with being a career counselor? I mean, what would you say?
Simply to help people find employment or secure employment.
Right.
The job of an executive recruiter is not to get someone a job.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to me because of a search on which I'm working and you get it, that's all fine and good, but I didn't do that for you. I did that for my client. The employer is the one who pays me. I work for the employer. That is a misunderstanding that a lot of people have. They go to recruiters and then they get upset because the recruiter doesn't find them a job. Well, that's not our job. Our job is to find employees for our clients. And you may not be the best. And we only submit the best. And I've submitted plenty of candidates who have not gotten the job, but I've also submitted candidates who I did not personally like. But I didn't have to work with them 8 hours a day. They were qualified. It was just my own personal opinion. It wasn't based on anything professional, just personality. And I would also submit candidates who I did like. And invariably, they'd hire the person I didn't like. But that's fine. There's nothing at all wrong with that. And as a career counselor, I want to help people navigate the labyrinth that's the job search. Because there are a lot of misunderstandings, misconceptions.
Right.
And once they're dispelled, then people have a better chance of securing employment. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
The purpose of a cover letter is to get the employer to look at the resume. The purpose of the resume is to get an interview. The purpose of the interview is to get the job. So you have to look at each as a step on the road to employment. Now, if your cover letter is 2 pages long, you're not getting they're not going to look at your resume, because if in 2 pages you haven't been able to tell them everything that they need to know, then what was the point of a 2-page cover letter? A good cover letter doesn't take more than 10 seconds to read. And if you want, I can give an example. The resume. Oh, okay. If you don't know the name of the person, you don't say dear sir or madam. These days you say dear hiring manager. First paragraph. I'll use accounting. I wish to apply for the position of accountant, which I saw on Indeed, that you posted on Indeed. Second paragraph, and this is the key. Having successfully saved my employer over the past 5 years in excess of $1 million by uncovering fraud, waste, and inaccuracies in recordings, I'm certain that I can not only fulfill the responsibilities of the job, but exceed them. Attached, please find a copy of my resume for your review. Thank you in advance for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely yours. And that's it. Short, sweet, to the point. The important paragraph is the second paragraph, where you're telling them what you did for somebody else, which is the reason why they should look at your resume and consider you for employment. That brings us to the resume. No one cares what you think about you. So having a philosophical statement or a professional summary is a total waste of space and a waste of real estate, because they're always put at the top of the resume, which is the most important part of the resume. And again, as I said, nobody cares what the applicant thinks about themselves. The recipient of the resume wants to know one thing and one thing only: what you can do for them. That's all. So I have my career counseling clients begin their resumes with a section titled Selected Accomplishments or Selected Achievements. It doesn't matter. And then bullet points. You know that that is what they're going to read. And if the bullet points are relevant to the job, then you've got a chance of getting them to read your entire resume and not just skim it, and inviting you in for an interview. Now, when the resume arrives, when someone advertises for a job, they can get 50, they can get 100 resumes. No one has time to read 100 resumes. So they do what I call the 5-second skim. First, they look to see where the person lives. They don't need to know a street address, just city and state or province, so they know if the person is within commuting distance, if they want somebody local, or if there's going to be a real relocation required. Then they look at the dates of employment. Can the person keep a job? If they've had too many jobs that only lasted a year or less, they're what we call a jumper, they're not going to be considered. Then they look for any special certifications. So they'll go to the education, or there could be a section on certifications, and they'll make sure that the person has the certifications that are required for consideration. If all that is good, then they'll read the resume, then they will give the applicant a call. The important thing to remember is that the resume has to be all about the employer, not about you. It's your resume. It's telling about your history and what you've done, but it's not what you like to do, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, but what you've accomplished. That's what the employer wants to know. All the rest of it will come out in an interview. But as far as the resume is concerned, the only thing that matters are your accomplishments.
Great. Thank you so much for those amazing tips, Bruce. Those were really, really helpful. And those were really amazing tips that you have, that you just now mentioned. But then after those tips, I also would like to know from you, what are those common mistakes that an employee makes, or maybe not an employee, but a job searcher makes while applying for a job, in their resume, while when they're creating a profile, when they're applying for a particular job. What are those common mistakes that a person makes, if you can also talk about them?
The number one mistake is talking too much.
Okay.
You want to be able to show that you can get to the point, you know how to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the 10-second cover letter is so important. That's why focusing on accomplishments in a resume is important. And that's why knowing when to shut up in an interview is so important. Also, in an interview, you have to remember that it's not what you say that matters, but what they hear. And I will use myself as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interview. It was going very well. Everyone was smiling. The conversation was very pleasant. And then they said, listen, we have some standard questions we're going to ask you. What's your biggest weakness? And I said, I can't follow directions. Now, I knew what I meant, but it got awfully cold in that room very quickly. And as I was answering the next question, I'm thinking to myself, what did I do? What did I say to turn them off? And then I realized what it was. And I said, I want to go back to my previous response. When I said I can't follow directions, that doesn't mean that if you call me up and tell me to do something, I can't do it, or that I can't come up with a plan and implement it. What I meant is I get lost going around a circle, literally. I am geographically challenged, have no sense of direction. No one is worse than I am. And invariably, someone will raise their hand and say, no, you've got to meet my wife. You got to meet my husband. I give them directions. They never show up. They're always late. And I said, excuse me, but I don't mean to get into an argument with you. But before anybody else says anything, I want you to understand something. I was once taken to my interview by a blind man and his dog. Everyone around the table laughed. Everyone agreed that I am the worst at following directions. And the atmosphere went back to what it had been previously. And I was offered the job. So that also shows that it's not exactly true that you only have one chance to make a good first impression. A mistake that interviewers, that job applicants make is that when they arrive for an interview and throughout the interview, they're not showing confidence. So when you meet with someone, you have to give them a firm handshake, look them straight in the eyes and say, "Thank you for inviting me in for the interview. I really appreciate it."
Mm-hmm.
You have to be confident. If you're not confident about yourself, why should they be? The second thing is they like honesty. So I don't know how it is in India, but in the United States, there are questions you are not allowed to ask job applicants. One has to do with health. So for example, I work with a lot of veterans. I tell them that when they go for an interview and everybody is seated and the pleasantries are over with, they should say, "I know you can't ask me, so I'm going to tell you. I have no health issues." Now everybody is happy. Their unvoiced concerns have now disappeared. They know the person doesn't have any health issues. Or they can say, "I know you can't ask me. I do have a health issue. This is what the health issue is. This is what it means." Now it's out on the table. They understand it. It's no longer an issue. It's not going to be a surprise. Employers do not like to be surprised. They don't want employees who are going to be surprising them every day with bad news. So in this case, and a number of my career counseling clients have done this, and it's always had the same result. They appreciate the honesty. They appreciate the fact that the individual is being upfront with them. They're not going to be surprised, and the health issue disappears. Because what is called the reasonable accommodation that the person needs, it's fine.
Right. Thank you so much, Bruce, again for that great answer and for those great tips. And you are also using your own examples, which is making the answer more interesting. So thank you so much for that as well. And I'm continuously getting questions on chat and also on my WhatsApp. If you notice, I'm constantly also trying to check my WhatsApp because we also get questions over there. So
Great.
yes, I have got one, and let me read it out for you. So I hope you can also see it here on screen. So the question says, in this day and age after COVID, the option to work from home had arisen. Also, some companies had initiated the hybrid work format, work from home as well as from the office. What are your thoughts about these so called modern work methods? Do they really help a company in the long run? What do you have to say, Bruce?
I hate to give this answer. It's the answer that lawyers always give. It
Okay.
depends.
Mhm.
The positives of working from home is that there is no commute. So the 2 hours, for sake of argument, that you would spend commuting, you could spend working, which is good for the employer. On the other hand, there are a lot of distractions in the house,
Mhm.
and that could hurt productivity. So the bottom line is whether or not the employee can continue to produce at their pre-COVID level, if you will, and to grow as they did before. Now, a new employee isn't trusted. Who knows if the person's actually going to be doing their work? There are plenty of bosses who don't care what time of the day you're working, as long as you get the work done. But there are jobs where you have to work normal business hours because the people you're going to be interacting with are working normal business hours. There are individuals who, for whatever reason, can't leave their home. They may have a disability, or they just may be a caregiver for a child or an elder parent. So allowing them to work from home means you're getting a good employee. And as long as they're able to produce, that's all the company cares about. However, that's not exactly true. They also want to have a team. And it's rather difficult to have a team if everybody only sees people from their chest up. You can't connect. So large companies, multinationals, will get all their people together once a year for an event, a company-wide event. Smaller companies, which allow work from home, can bring everybody together once a month, once a quarter, whatever. From the company's perspective, as long as the productivity continues and increases, and there is a team atmosphere, doesn't matter where somebody's working. I've worked with people who were very good at their jobs, but just miserable to be around. And when they go on vacation, productivity would increase. So you can have a good employee, a good worker, who's not necessarily a great employee because they're not a great colleague. So having them work from home solves that problem. You're still getting the productivity and not another negativity. So it's not a clear answer because there is no clear answer. It depends on the company. It depends on the employees.
Okay, so let me put it this way. So, as a career counselor yourself, do you
Mhm.
endorse, let's say, a job seeker comes to you for career counseling?
Mhm.
So, would you ask that person to apply in a company who is allowing work from home, or would you
Sure.
ask the person to apply in a company who is asking to come to the office regularly and work from the office?
Yes. I would tell them in advance. So if they're not interested in working from home,
Mhm.
or if they don't want to have to work in the office, or if they want to work in the office all day long, that's fine. Just apply for. That's one of the mistakes that people make. They
Mhm.
apply for jobs they really don't want, that they're
Right.
not either that they're not qualified for. It's I would be great at this job. I could do this job. There's no question about it. The only problem is that they're not qualified. They don't have the years of experience. They don't have the certifications. They don't meet the minimum qualifications for the job.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Mhm.
And what I tell them is just if you're only going to be applying for jobs that you want, when it's quite clear the employer doesn't want you, you're going to become depressed. You're going to be frustrated. Apply for jobs for which you are qualified.
Mhm.
And you've got a better chance of getting a positive response.
Right.
But so many people just apply willy-nilly for anything that they think they can do, and they don't understand why they're rejected 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many a career counseling client who will come to me and say they've applied literally for hundreds of jobs and got no responses. So I asked to see the job descriptions, and they're not qualified. I said, you don't have a master's degree in whatever, computer science. So why are you applying for the job? They're not going to consider you.
Right. Okay. All right. So, but Bruce, also, the job market has significantly evolved, as you already know, right? And, especially with digital platform becoming quite prominent these days. So, as an effective job search today involves, a well-crafted resume, a strong LinkedIn presence, and strategic networking. So now, if you talk about tailoring your resume to each job application and being prepared for both, let's say, in-person and virtual interviews, so could you tell few crucial steps that a job seeker should be um, focusing on while preparing for, let's say, in-person interview and also virtual interviews?
Okay, I heard a number of things.
Mhm.
You said something about, and if I misheard you, correct me, different resumes for different jobs.
Right.
100% wrong. The resume is about the applicant, so why would the resume change? It's not about the employer. It's about what you've done. You
Right.
need one resume. If your
Mhm.
resume is accurate and honest, you don't need more than one resume. I know a lot of people who went out and paid a lot of money for a lot of resumes they
Mhm.
went to, and I'm not saying that all resume writers are this way, but there are resume writers who, if you go to them and you say, listen, I need a resume for healthcare, I need a resume for IT, I need a resume for this, I need a resume for that, I want 4 resumes. Well, they're going to charge you for 4 resumes. I don't believe in that. My career counseling clients have one resume. Now,
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you have the question at the bottom of the screen because I forgot what the rest of it was. Now, in preparing for virtual or in-person interviews, most of it's the same. What's the same? You need to research the interviewers so that you can find out if you have something in common with them.
Mhm.
For example, let's just say you volunteer at your house of worship, all right? And you served on some committee, doesn't matter what committee. And you know that one of the interviewers also volunteered at their house of worship. They ask you a question, how do you deal with a difficult client? It's obviously work related.
Mhm.
So you know what? Instead of giving you an example of a difficult client, I'm going to give you an example that I think you'll appreciate because you volunteer at your church, synagogue, mosque, whatever. I volunteer at mine. Oh, how do you know that? Well, I researched you. Now they know that you prepare well for meetings. Now
Wow.
you get to answer the question.
Mhm.
And you say, we had this one gentleman who blah, 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 blah. You tell the story. And the guy is smiling, saying, yeah, we had the same thing. You handled it better than I did. Or you're now forming a personal connection. People hire people they like. On a few occasions, I've submitted, well, I always submit multiple candidates to my clients, employers. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking now as a recruiter. But on a couple of occasions, the employer would call me up and say, Bruce, we don't know whether we should hire A or B. We can't decide. So I said, it's not a problem. I have no objection to being paid twice, so hire both of them. And they laugh and they say, okay, but what should we do? I said, it's very simple. You call everybody into the room. You give them a piece of paper and a
Mm-hmm.
pencil. And you ask them to write on, you tell them these are the two finalists. You remind them who they are. And you say, write down the name of the person who you would prefer to be stuck in an elevator with for 3 hours.
Wow. That's like a Miss World question.
All right. I've never seen Miss World, but I'll accept that. And it works because you're thinking, okay, who would I want? Who do I feel most comfortable with? That's what you're really asking.
Mhm.
But the question, because it's a little humorous, will lower the tension a bit and say, yeah, I'd rather be with Rajani than with Bruce. And in each case, it works.
Okay.
Now, when you're meeting somebody in person, I said before, confidence, well, you need confidence for both the in-person and virtual. But you have to shake hands, you have to make eye contact. You
Mm-hmm.
have to make eye contact also with the virtual. And I'm terrible at it. I should be looking all the time, what I'm doing right now, at the light at the top of my computer monitor, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where the camera is.
Right.
But I don't do that. I look at you. On
Mm-hmm.
my screen, you're to the right. Or
Yeah.
I look down to see to read the question.
Mm-hmm.
I've also have the camera back. I do that because for two reasons. One, I have an eye problem and my eyes start to water.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start to water, I don't want the interviewer to think that I'm crying. All right. They won't hear any crying in my voice, but
Mm-hmm.
why tear? Why you can't see it? It's back. But I also want you to see the background. These are real books. This is not a virtual
Uh-huh.
screen. When interviewing potential clients, it is amazing how often someone will say to me that they recognize this book. It's blue. It's very big. It's written by a gentleman who sadly passed away, I believe it was last year, David McCullough. It's called Truman. It's the biography of President Harry S. Truman. And they recognize it because it's a very, very heavy book.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll start, they ask questions about it. What'd you like about it? Have you read anything else by him? I say, yeah, all these and what's on on my Kindle. And that forms a personal connection. I've had veterans who are very humble, very modest. They've received numerous medals and citations. They don't want to talk about them. But they all have in their home their medals, citations, ribbons, what have you, framed. So I tell them just put it on the wall behind you. And during the interviewer will ask you about it and you can mention it to them. You can explain what happened. That reminds me of another instance, which would work both for the in-person or the virtual. I had a career counseling client who could not get a job interview to save his life. Really nice guy. He was a Marine, and he was keeping something from me. I knew he was. Finally, I said to him, "Tell me what it is that you're not telling me." And he said, "Well, I am a Silver Star recipient. On the list of honors, that's depending on what list you're looking at, it's either number 2 or number 3. This means he did something very, very important." So we changed his resume. And the first bullet point on the resume, previously the phone did not ring even once. First bullet point became Marine Corps Veteran Silver Star recipient. His phone didn't stop ringing. That's all anybody read. They wanted this guy working. Now, there's another difference between the in-person and virtual. For example, right now, this is a virtual interview, so it behooves me to mention the fact that it is now pouring rain, even though the sun seems to be shining. And sometimes when this happens, I lose the internet. So if I should lose the internet, I thank you and my apologies. That's an example of the difference between the virtual and the in-person. The in-person, you can't be late. The virtual, you can't be late. But also for the virtual, you have to make sure that everything is working. You told me to log in 10 minutes early. I logged in 20 minutes early. You logged in 15 minutes early. But that just gave me the opportunity, because I've never used this platform before, to make sure everything was working. And then if I had a problem, to tell you so that you could tell me how to fix it. Luckily, there were no problems. But I've had plenty of people who have said they can't log in, or they don't know how I use Zoom. They don't know how to use Zoom. Well, that's a big problem. It's a gigantic problem when the person is applying for a position in IT.
Right.
So with the virtual, you have the background. You also don't have to wear a suit.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I would wear a jacket, but I couldn't do this. With this humidity, I couldn't do it. I'd either be drenched in perspiration or would have passed out 15 minutes ago. So the dress code is a little less. In person, I always tell people to dress one level above what they would be wearing for the job. So if you're applying for an IT position, you're going to be wearing khakis, meaning trousers, and a shirt. When you're going for the interview, put on a tie and a jacket. It's just showing respect.
Wow, thank you so much, Bruce. Though, I mean, that's a really insightful answer, I must say. And thank you so much again for those great tips. Now, again, see, you said something about the internet not working fine, and I've started lagging. I don't know why this has suddenly started happening, but I think it will be okay in some time. Okay, but Bruce, I also would like to know from you. So people say, there's this quote that first impression is the last impression. Do you believe in that? And
Yeah.
does first impression really is the last impression? And if so, what can the what can a person do to make their first impression last longer?
No, the first impression is not the last impression. You can have a second chance to make a first impression. I will give you an example. I used to have shared office space, and I had a meeting with a candidate for one of my clients. He was looking to hire a quality assurance director. It was an IT position. I did not know who he was. I didn't know what he looked like. And the receptionist called me and said, Mr. Smith is here. So I walked up, and there were a few people in the reception area, and I said, Mr. Smith. And this gentleman looked at me, and he didn't stand up. He was wearing a collared shirt with buttons, but the shirt wasn't buttoned. The collar wasn't buttoned. His tie wasn't straight. And when I put out my hand to shake hands with him, he looked at it for a few seconds and then gave me a very weak handshake, what I call a fingertip handshake, which is a huge turnoff for me. I want a strong handshake. I want to know that this is a person who has confidence. But I said, please, let's go into the conference room. So we go into the conference room, we sit down, and as I told you, with the veterans dealing with health issues, he said to me, Bruce, before we get started, I have to tell you something. I am legally blind. Oh, he was also looking at his cell phone like this. All right, which was also kind of strange. Now he tells me he's legally blind. Telephone doesn't matter. The collar not being buttoned doesn't matter. The tie not being straight doesn't matter. The only thing I wanted to know is how can a person who is legally blind be a quality assurance person for a website, for an internet company? Because I'm sure you've seen code. It's single space, letters, numbers. How is this possible? So I asked the only question I could ask, which was, because there are laws here against that, I said, what special accommodation do you need? And he said a 6-foot table and an electric outlet with 4 sockets, because he had all the equipment he needed. And he started to describe to me his equipment that magnified everything. It spoke to him, so it sometimes it would read off what the code was. He had it all. So my client couldn't care less about the fact that he was visually impaired. 6-foot table he didn't have to bring. They had it. There were plenty of outlets. No problem. So the initial impression he made was terrible. But then it disappeared once he explained it. I want to say something else. The interview begins when the person arrives at the building. Because if you are an hour early, not because of the weather, it's a beautiful day outside, all right? You're an hour early for an interview, that sends the message that you're not good with time management. If you're late for the interview, not only are you not good with time management, but you're not getting the job. You should always arrive, if you know where you're going, 15, 20 minutes early because of traffic, whatever, but you go inside 10 minutes early. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's good time management. Mm-hmm. Then you have the interview. You say thank you, you shake hands, you go home. Interview's not over with. Now you have to write a thank you letter. And each thank you email, and when I say each, everybody who interviews you gets a different thank you. Now, people panic. How am I going to write a unique thank you to every person? Mm-hmm. First, make sure you have their email address. If you don't have the email address for everyone, and for whatever reason they don't want to give it to you, then you just send the one email to the person who organized and ask to share it. Now, I like relatively short thank yous, but this is the key to an effective thank you email. And a good thank you email can repair the damage caused in a bad interview. A bad thank you email can ruin what had been a good interview. So here's the question you can ask. I'm a big believer that the questions you ask in an interview are more important than the answers you give. And here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to get this job, what could I do to make your life easier? Or how could I make your life easier?
Wow.
You write down the person's name so you don't get confused, and you write down the answer. And you show them that you're writing it down. You don't do this because they won't know if you're texting your best friend or if you're writing the answer.
Right.
Go old school, pen and paper. Nothing wrong with that. Just as an aside, you should also bring a few copies of your resume with you, because to this day, I find it hard to believe how many employers don't have the resume in front of them for the interview. Just thought of something I want to make sure I say. You can also do what I just did in an interview, so you don't forget what you're saying. Now, in the thank you letter, they all begin the same way. Thank you for interviewing me for the blah blah position. I really appreciated it. I heard you when you said, and now this is the answer to your question, how can I make your life easier? I want to remind you, as I told you, blah, blah, blah. Now they know that you heard them, you listened, you understood, and you haven't forgotten. So if they hire you, that's going to be your priority. And everybody's getting the same type of format of letter. So they all know you were listening. They all know that you're coming on board to make their lives easier.
Right.
Now, what I remembered and what I definitely want to discuss for a moment is the number one question that's asked in an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
That is not a question. If I say, Rajni, tell me about yourself, I'm not asking you any question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving you if you want, I'm giving you an order. Tell me about yourself. I'm giving you an instruction. What I'm really doing is giving you an opportunity. And the mistake most people make is to summarize their resume. Well, they've already seen the resume.
Right.
You wouldn't be sitting there if they hadn't seen the resume. They like the resume.
Yeah.
When it's your time to ask questions, the first question I like to ask is, why did you invite me in for a resume, for an interview? That means that they have to say something positive about you. So if everything up until now has been negative, it's now become positive. But anyways, tell us about yourself. Tell them something that you're exceedingly proud of. I know we only have 5 minutes left. So I will give you 2 quick examples.
Sure.
One was a soldier who was just an infantryman. You go into battle, achieve this goal. That was it. That's what he did in the Army. He did what he was told. He wasn't a high-ranking officer. I think he was a corporal. I asked him what he did that was most meaningful for him. And he said, well, it was nice guarding the schools. He was in Afghanistan. And I said, well, tell me about that. He said, well, when the builders were building the girls' schools, we would have to protect them, and then we would have to protect the girls when they were coming and leaving the school. And he got emotional. And I said, that's what you tell them when they say, tell us about yourself. Tell them something that isn't in the resume, something about you as a person. What gave you so much satisfaction? And in that case, it was seeing little girls going to school for the first time and being a part of that. That will resonate. I can see on your face that it resonates with you. All right?
Huh?
That's the type of story you want to tell.
Right.
I had another one. Well, I've got a few, but I'll give you another one. Former police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same type of conversation. I said, well, tell me what really made you emotional. And he said, well, when I was a rookie, 3 months on the job, I had to deliver 2 babies. I said, okay. And then he said, 10 years later, I was at the right place at the right time, and I was able to capture 2 armed bank robbers and retrieve the money. And he looked at me and he said, Bruce, I was more afraid delivering those babies than capturing the 2 armed bank robbers. Now, when he would tell his story, it would be funny. I laughed. I'm sure everybody who hears him tell the story laughs. But that's what you want to do in the interview, be it online or in person. You want the individual to know who you are deep down as a person. And tell us about yourself is that opportunity. And just like my appearance here right now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can mispronounce a word. You can get tongue-tied. You can lose your train of thought. It's called being human. It does not matter. Just be, as long as you're honest, as long as you're telling the truth, you have nothing to worry about.
Great advice. That's a great advice. Thank you so much, Bruce, for sharing those beautiful stories too, and for sharing that great advice. I mean, you're already getting the message. My team is loving the show, and so are our lovely audiences. It's an amazing show. I know we just have a minute, but if you would allow me, if you have some time, I would like to. Yes, it didn't feel like an hour. But if you have some time, I would still like to, go ahead and take few questions from the audiences too.
Happy to.
Great. All right. So now let's quickly. Okay. So we have a couple of questions here from the viewers. Okay, Reddy is here and he says, how do you recommend candidates navigate the current job market, which is increasingly reliant on AI powered applicant tracking systems and automated screening tools? Okay, that's a great question. What
That
advice do
is
you
a
have?
great question. I did research on the applicant tracking systems because I didn't know anything at all about them. And every expert wrote something else different. There were those that talked about fonts. There were those that talked, it doesn't matter. The only thing they all agreed on was no shading, meaning I assume that our viewers can see the question on the screen. That's shading. Everybody can see the
Yes, yes.
question?
Yeah,
Okay.
they can.
So that's shading. That's a blue background with white font. An applicant tracking system, a bad applicant tracking system, and you have to assume that it's a bad applicant tracking system, can't read that. So don't do it. They also don't like boxes. They also don't like graphics. So just keep it simple. White paper, black letters. Some things should be in bold, not everything. I was one of those in school who would highlight every line of the text. And one teacher came over to me and said, if you highlight everything, you've highlighted nothing. Same thing for a resume. If you put everything in bold, nothing. Keep it simple. No fancy schmancy. You're not, unless you're applying for a job as a graphic designer, you're not applying for a job as a graphic designer. So nobody cares about your design ability, except to say that the resume has to be clean, neat, and easy to understand. So you start with your selected accomplishments. Then you move down to your, some people put in skills, that's fine. Then you move down to your employment history, and then special things, volunteer work, any publications you've had, any speaking engagements. Those, the publications, the speaking engagements, being quoted in the media, all of those send the message that other people think that what you have accomplished or that your opinion is valuable. And it's just not you saying it. So the way to get around the ATS and the automated screening tools is to keep your resume clean and neat. AI, I don't like to talk about because I don't use AI.
Okay.
There are those that say, have ChatGPT do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has come to me with an AI produced document, I've had to redo. With AI, there's what's called hallucinations. The famous case was an attorney who had AI produce two, I believe they're called briefs for court, or two documents for the court, on which various cases were cited. And the judge looked at it and he called a recess. He went into his chambers, he came out, and he asked the lawyer what he was trying to pull. And the lawyer said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, these cases don't exist. And then he admitted it was done by AI. And that happens a great deal. Mm-hmm. Over here are Churchill's sixth volume, Second World War. Mm-hmm. Someone sent me a speech they had written. They asked me to review it because I'm also a professional writer. Mm-hmm. And they quoted Churchill. And I said, no, I don't think so. And they had the footnote. I have the book. I went to the book. Wasn't on the page. It wasn't on the page before that. Wasn't on the page after that. It didn't sound like something Churchill would have said. And it definitely wasn't in the book. So now I had to go through and check everything. And these lies are what in the AI world are called hallucinations. So I don't use AI. I don't trust AI.
Do you endorse it?
Pardon me?
Do you endorse AI?
Do I endorse it?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, no? Oh, okay.
What do you mean by endorse?
As in, would you recommend people to use AI in their jobs?
No.
Okay.
No, because you don't know what's actually going out. You want to have control over your job search. You certainly don't want to outsource it to a computer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because whatever is written there, it's on you.
Yeah.
You can't get up and say, well, I really didn't apply. It was AI. I set up instructions to apply for any job that had the word development in it. Well, this happened to me many years ago. I was living in Toronto and I applied for a job as director of development. which in my world meant fundraiser. I didn't quite understand it because the company was a for-profit, wasn't a nonprofit, but I figured maybe they have a philanthropic arm. And the ad was in the, what's it called? The Journal of Philanthropy? Not important. So I arrive, and the boss's executive assistant, in those days probably secretary, told him I was there. I walked in. He asked me for a copy of my resume. I handed him my resume. He looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm applying for the job of director of development." He said, "Why? You're not qualified?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And he called the secretary on the intercom and asked her who placed the ad. And a new hire came in, scared to death. And she said, well, I was told to place an ad for director of development, standard job description, standard ad. And I did it. And we would always put it in the Journal of Philanthropy. He said, this isn't a fundraising position. This was some other type of development. I don't remember what it was. He was a very nice man. As I was leaving, I said, "Are you going to fire her?" And he goes, "No, she made an honest mistake. She will learn." I would have loved to work for this guy. He asked me if it was all right if I made if he made some comments on my resume. He shredded it. All right, so I left there with a much better resume and saw a very good boss. And as I said, I regret not having gotten the job with them. But I was in charge of everything. Any mistake I make, I take credit for it or take the blame for it. I'm not going to get up and have to say, well, I didn't check what was going out because I programmed artificial intelligence to do everything and trusted that everything would be done correctly. No, thank you.
Well, okay. Thank you so much again for sharing the answer and for Reddy. I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much, Bruce, for such detailed answer. I'm loving this show. I didn't want it to end, but because it is supposed to end in few minutes, so I would like to take one more question from the viewer side, and if you're okay, so I would like to do an episode 2 of it because we still have a lot of questions unanswered. I mean,
happy to.
great. Thank you so much for saying that. All right. So let me quickly take another question. So this is again on WhatsApp and it is from a viewer. He says, how to respond to an interview if they say they are overqualified for the job?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
It depends on the definition of overqualified.
Mm-hmm.
It can be that you have too many years of employment, and then that's your fault. You shouldn't have applied for a job that said the minimum 15 years employment if you only have 5.
Right.
But the problem with saying you're overqualified is, well, why did they bring you in for the interview in the first place? I've never quite understood the question. Not that the viewer is asking, but that it's asked by the interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't want to, you can say, listen, you'll have to define for me what you mean by overqualified. Because obviously you thought I was qualified enough for the job to bring me in. So what is your real concern? That's how I would respond. Now, there are people who are coming from major corporations. And they're being interviewed by a small company. And the small company is going to be afraid that the applicant is going to be bored. They're used to working with hundreds of having hundreds of colleagues to help them, clients around the world, huge budgets, and you're a little company. So what I tell them is, you don't say that you worked for, I don't know, IBM. Well, you say you worked for IBM, but you say you worked for a division of IBM. I saw somebody wrote Apple, a department in Apple. So you were at a smaller part of the company. You weren't working in the C-suite. You were working for a division. And the division had a budget of $1 million and not $1 billion. And there were 10 of you in the office, not 10,000. Now, the question is, so that's basically my answer.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for the answer again, Bruce. And okay, so now before I let you go, one last question I would like to know from you. And you already have agreed to do a second episode. So I will be asking the pending questions from the viewers and from my end that I've prepared for you in our second
Rajni,
episode.
I have to interrupt you.
Please go ahead.
Everything you just said didn't come across. It was all broken up.
Oh, okay.
And right now your screen is frozen.
Oh, is that so?
So it was, I heard when you thanked me, and then you had just one more question, but I didn't hear the question. But if you put it at the bottom of the screen, if it's possible, because you're frozen, I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay, am I still frozen, or is it better now?
You're still frozen, but you're moving around from one frozen to another frozen.
Oh my God.
I just saw you blink, so I think you're not frozen anymore. Okay. All right. So what was it? Now you're okay. What's the question?
Great. So, Bruce, I was saying that before I let you go, I mean, because we have questions from the viewers, and I prepared a couple of questions for you, which are still pending. And now that you have agreed to do a second episode, we will be taking those questions in that episode. But for now, before I let you go, I would like to ask from you. So, if you can give, let's say, 5 tips to our audiences who's watching us right now. How can they be selected for the position that they're applying for? Five tips, 5 easy tips that they should follow.
Read the job description carefully and make sure that you are really, truly, honestly qualified for the job. Have a short cover letter which shows that you can get to the point. You know what is the most important thing for the employer to know about you, and that you aren't going to ramble on and on and on and on. Now, this says 5 easy tips for a job interview. So I'll move on to a job interview. Well, no. The resume, third tip is resume should be focused on the employer, meaning your accomplishments, what value you bring to an employer. At the interview, exude confidence. Be honest, be open. Tell stories that explain who you are as a person, because they're not just hiring an employee, they're hiring a person. And as I said before, people only hire people they like. So if you arrive, and one other thing, don't wear perfume. No perfume, no cologne, no scented aftershave. Because just because you think it smells nicely doesn't mean they will. And believe me, I've had many interviews with people who I've given what's called the 5-minute rush to. And I'm sure they thought it was a great interview, but I just wanted them out of the office because I couldn't stand the stench. So no perfume or cologne.
Thank you so much again, Bruce, for those great 5 tips. And I'm sure they are going to help the viewers a lot when they will be appearing for an interview. So thank you so much again for doing this with us, and hoping to see you very soon for the second episode. And to our viewers, I would like to tell you that if you're looking for career counseling, so you can get in touch with Bruce. Here are his details. You can give him a call at +1 2016748858. I would like to repeat the number: +1 2016748858. His email is bh@hsstaffing.com, and his website is hsstaffing.com. So you can also check his website out. Yes, and if you're looking for a project placement or visa sponsorship, you can reach out to me on my number, which is +1 732 707 9151. My email is rajni@hirightpeople.com, and our website is www.hirightpeople.com. Remember, we sponsor H-1B visas and other work visas based on job availability and regulations. All right,
Right?
so thank
I
you
just
so
wanted to
much.
thank you. Thank you very much. And now you've frozen again.
No, I was just waiting for you to,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I just wanted to thank you. This has been very enjoyable, and I look forward to round 2.
Great. I too am looking forward to that. And thank you so much again for taking our time and doing the show. It really means a lot. And I've already started receiving messages from my team and also from the viewers for such amazing episodes. So can't wait for the part 2 of it.
Lovely. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great evening.
You have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. To our lovely viewers, I would like to tell you that I hope you enjoyed our show today. So if you did, don't forget to like the episode. Don't forget to share the episode with your friends who are looking out for a job and who want to know about how they can, better themselves while appearing for a job interview, because Bruce has given out some amazing tips. So you can follow them, and also just don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, because we bring every day great webinars for you on immigration related topic and also job related topics. So keep on watching and keep on subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Bharara. I'll have to take a leave for now, but don't you worry, I'll be back soon. But until I'm back, you guys keep watching this space, Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Bye for now.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 732-707-9151 or mail us at rajni@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www